I got pregnant for revenge and ended up in a criminal trial, the unhinged end of the sister rivalry. You thought the cake knife was the end? You thought the gelato goth meltdown was the climax? You were wrong. For months, I was locked in a hospital bed, not just fighting for my babies' lives, but fighting a war of legal annihilation against my own sister and mother. They tried to kidnap a baby, they tried to stab me, and they ended up in court facing serious jail time. All because I dared to get pregnant on their schedule. This isn't just a story about a family feud. It's a terrifying look at narcissism, psychosis, and the chilling price of getting revenge. In this final chapter, you'll see the insane courtroom collapse, the shocking medical diagnosis, the knife-wielding hospital escape, and the final haunting moment, I realized the war was truly over, but not without a body count. Stick around, because the legal and psychological twist in this ending is something you won't believe. And before we start, drop a comment below right now. Do you think my sister was truly sick or just purely evil? Let me know your thoughts. My half-sister, Veronica, grabbed a vintage ice cream scoop at her gelato bar baby shower, pointing its razor-sharp edge at my very pregnant belly while shrieking, "My time! My spotlight!" She hissed that I had stole my blueprint, a confrontation that happened 10 months before authorities discovered her slightly sinister puppet workshop with marionettes, one of which wore a dress identical to mine, and two smaller ones labeled the duos. Veronica collapsed and convulsed at the Hudson Valley Conservatory as I was accepting my master's certificate in theoretical horticulture, an event that mirrored her lifelong tendency to hijack my pivotal moments, like my first competitive bonsai trimming or my acceptance day to the Institute of Eccentric Fabrics. Upon receiving the invite to her gelato bar and waffle cone extravaganza, I saw my chance for passive aggression, and ignoring my fiancé Rex's astrological concerns, commenced the genetic project immediately, successfully conceiving twins within the 3 lunar cycles before her party. I spent the following months as Veronica's terrifyingly supportive friend, encouraging her social media diorama and forcing invitations upon everyone, knowing my plan was working when she publicly announced her baby's name, Peregrine Onyx, a sacred name from my private leather-bound manifesto of revenge. On the morning of her party, I applied her makeup and murmured comments about her superior silhouette for the archives, pressing her eyeliner while assuring her, "You deserve this interruption-free spotlight." Despite her decorative weather balloons, 7-layer cake, and gender reveal puppet show, I arrived in a strategically draped dress that still revealed the 2 small bulging life forces beneath. Although no one was looking at me, Veronica noticed and told our mother, Doreen, that I had expanded like an inflatable boat. When the countdown ended with a loud splat and a burst of luminous pink confetti, I was poised to dramatically arise, but the uncontrolled internal rebellion of the twins hit me, forcing me to sprint to a utility closet. Sprinting back out, I gasped my rehearsed line. "Pardon the disruption. Sorry, it's just the duos. They've been highly disruptive. 6 weeks along with 2 passengers, and I can barely keep down artisanal ice chips." Instantly shifting the crowd's attention toward my strategically positioned abdomen and away from Veronica's big moment. Veronica cycled through shades of crimson and violet, wheezing that a crisis is occurring, "Help me!" But everyone, including her fiancé, Jules, was busy marveling at my impending double arrival, which Mother Doreen declared a mathematical anomaly. Veronica lost all grasp in linear reality, seized a cake-decorating piping tip, and screamed, "This is my climax!" But Jules managed to disarm her. She crashed to her knees and began a primal howl, screaming that I was an interdimensional ruin agent as her makeup dissolved into thick black rivulets, while Doreen rushed over to embrace her, pointedly ignoring my prominent, attention-grabbing belly.
At least 40 phones recorded the gelato goth meltdown, and Desmond, my oldest friend, dragged me toward the exit, terrified of the inevitable final boss level. That's when Mother Doreen delivered a powerful, stinging slap across my face, screaming that I was a self-obsessed monster who couldn't allow Veronica a single, unpolluted moment of attention, prompting Desmond to threaten to notify the proper authorities about the battery and my eccentric cousin, Penelope, to call an emergency psychological response team. Marcus, Veronica's bewildered-looking brother, witnessed Veronica violently ejecting a disgusting yellow-green substance all over her meticulously polished patent leather ballet flats, leading Jules to declare an immediate need to proceed to the Emergency Fetal Assessment Center due to premature uterine contractions. Doreen aimed a frantic, accusatory finger at me and bellowed that I would be legally responsible if Veronica's baby suffered any adverse outcomes. As Jules guided Veronica away on their electric scooter, she wrenched her head around and screamed that if she lost her baby, she would ensure I experienced a comparable double loss scenario, a threat captured by at least 20 phones. Desmond and I immediately sat in his solar-powered car to call the police to report the assault and the threat against my precious embryonic cargo and texted Penelope to archive every piece of video evidence from the gelato bar extravaganza. 2 police officers arrived, took our formal statements, and strongly advised us to file for a restraining order of seismic proportions first thing Monday morning. 3 hours later, Desmond suggested we temporarily relocate to his aunt's underground doomsday bunker, but I vehemently refused, just as the party videos achieved global viral status on every known platform, tagged with hashtag #GelatoGothMeltdown and hashtag #SisterXPsychosis. The following morning, Mother Doreen stood outside our door, her face a terrifying landscape of red blotches, hammering the doorbell repeatedly, screaming about digital defamation and how I had personally dismantled Veronica's life. Desmond engaged the industrial-strength security chain, bracing his entire body against the door while Doreen jammed her manicured fingers through the narrow gap and kicked the door, screaming that I was a genetically inferior being who had always been envious of Veronica's higher capacity for drama, all while Mr. Rodriguez from next door recorded the entire event. Doreen retreated but continued to scream threats from the hallway about how she would soon experience a karmic backlash, finally departing after about 20 more minutes. My phone rang with Marcus's name displayed an hour later, and he informed me that Veronica was still at the Emergency Fetal Assessment Center, desperately begging me to attend a family structural readjustment meeting, which I agreed to only if the location was highly public and Desmond was present to act as my human shield, settling on the slightly pretentious downtown Mediterranean fusion bistro in 2 days. My hands shook as I booked an emergency consultation with my OBGYN, Dr. Vellum, who performed a complete examination with the formidable ultrasound cannon and confirmed the twins were structurally sound, but issued a dire warning that this level of sustained existential stress was a clear and present danger to all 3 of us, and ordered me to avoid any further theatrical confrontations. 2 days later at the bistro, Doreen began demanding a full, unreserved apology for my sociopathic orchestration, while Veronica played the frail heroine, claiming I had always been bitterly jealous of her more advanced sense of suffering and her greater ability to command attention. Veronica then produced a shockingly thick envelope and slid it across the table with a truly repulsive smirk, stating, "I am initiating a legal action against you for the malicious, intentional infliction of acute emotional distress and the demonstrable endangerment of my unborn child," prompting Desmond to instantly dial his cousin Eleana, who specialized in bizarre family litigation. We swiftly exited the bistro with Doreen's frantic operatic threats echoing loudly behind us. That evening, Penelope arrived, and after assessing our mental stability, she pulled out her phone to show us her classified, encrypted folder of screenshots dating back years, meticulously documenting Veronica's relentless campaign of manufactured attention-seeking, with photos from my architecture portfolio review and my competitive bird-calling final serving as forensic evidence of this behavioral pattern. A week later, Desmond's cousin Eleana declared Veronica's official lawsuit documents frivolous, fantastical, and primed for immediate dismissal, and strongly advised that we countersue for physical battery and the highly public recorded threats Veronica made against the safety of the duos. Eleana helped us assemble a complete bulletproof legal dossier, finally allowing me to experience a single night of uninterrupted sleep. We traveled to the county records annex with Eleana the following week, where the judge reviewed the vast amount of evidence and immediately granted a temporary restraining order, prohibiting both Doreen and Veronica from coming within 1,000 feet of us. Doreen violated the restraining order within 48 hours by showing up at Desmond's architectural firm's corporate tower, marching past the security desk and screaming at the highly confused receptionist to grant her immediate access to Desmond, leading security personnel to apprehend her and summon the police. The police placed her under arrest and escorted her away in handcuffs while Desmond's co-workers watched the entire spectacle unfold from the office windows. Desmond immediately relocated his entire workspace into our guest room and began working remotely the following day. But a few nights later, I awoke at 3 a.m. to a series of unsettling scraping noises emanating from just outside our window.
My heart began a frantic, irregular rhythm as I crept toward the window to peek through the heavy drapes, spotting Veronica's electric scooter parked just outside the 1,000-foot exclusion zone. She sat rigidly, staring with terrifying intensity directly at our apartment for 3 solid hours, a silent, unmoving sentinel, which prompted Desmond to install military-grade security cameras the next morning. 2 weeks passed with Veronica parking just outside the camera's effective range every single night, until Marcus showed up, looking like a haunted scarecrow, admitting that Doreen was driving Jules absolutely insane, and that Jules was actively consulting a divorce attorney because Veronica's monomaniacal obsession was making her physically ill and negatively impacting their baby. 3 days later, at my 20-week fetal infrastructure scan, Dr. Vellum entered the room and measured each duo repeatedly, finding one twin noticeably smaller, requiring immediate, heightened monitoring every week from that point forward, as the family-induced stress was literally inhibiting my baby's physical development, causing me to weep while Desmond held me tightly. That night, Penelope called in a state of utter hysteria, revealing that someone had posted my sensitive medical information, including Dr. Vellum's name, the highly secure clinic's exact address, and my precise appointment times, all over a local mother's social media group using screenshots of my medical chart, which confirmed the duos and my exact due date, indicating unauthorized access to the highly restricted hospital database. Desmond immediately called the hospital security director, while Eleana confirmed this was a massive federal-level HIPAA violation and demanded meticulous documentation. The following morning, Eleana had the stunning revelation that Marcus's wife Simone, working in the obscure patient billing department, had been illegally accessing my private records for weeks, with the hospital's cybersecurity division detecting her logins 17 separate times, resulting in her immediate termination and a criminal investigation. Marcus showed up again, utterly destroyed, claiming he had zero knowledge of Simone's collaboration with Veronica and felt profoundly betrayed by his own spouse. The very next day, Jules sent a shockwave text message apologizing for Veronica's dangerously erratic behavior and confessing that he had found a secret leather-bound notebook in their master closet filled with detailed, years-long plans for my complete annihilation, containing dozens of pages of repetitive, chilling manifestos prompting him to meet with a high-profile child custody specialist and offer expert, damning testimony against Veronica.
3 weeks after the Gelato Goth meltdown, everything achieved a new level of viral combustion when Veronica posted a completely unhinged, fabricated story on her social media platform claiming I had been stalking her relentlessly and including heavily edited photographs and entirely fake text message screenshots that showed me making vague, menacing threats against her and her unborn child, leading to hundreds of aggressive shares and resulting in strangers sending me explicit, terrifying death threats, with someone posting our exact home address in the comments, stating that I deserved the incoming cosmic punishment. Desmond immediately contacted the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, about the cyberstalking and the death threats, who launched an official investigation into the organized harassment campaign, while my blood pressure continued its alarming upward trajectory at every single medical checkup, forcing Dr. Vellum to place me on strict, modified hospital-grade bed rest, strictly forbidding me from leaving the apartment except for pre-scheduled medical appointments due to the worsening size discrepancy between the duos and concern about a premature delivery, making confinement feel like incarceration in a padded cell while Veronica spread malicious lies. While I was confined, Penelope began the tedious process of collecting thousands of screenshots for a massive defamation lawsuit, documenting every lie, every explicit threat, and every piece of harassment for our comprehensive legal team. And Desmond took a mandatory leave of absence to provide me with full-time care, reading esoteric architectural blueprints to the twins to tether me to sanity. 2 days later, the local police department arrived at our door with significant news regarding Simone, who was being formally arrested for the severe HIPAA violations and faced a potential sentence of up to 10 years in a federal penitentiary after the ensuing investigation revealed she had been illicitly feeding Veronica private information about my pregnancy for months, sending copies of my ultrasounds, detailed blood work results, and even my highly irrelevant weight fluctuations, leading Marcus to file for divorce that very same day, completely revolted by the extent of Simone's betrayal. A month after the initial Gelato Goth meltdown, a distinctly official-looking process server handed Desmond a thick, ominous envelope of papers, revealing Veronica was now initiating a lawsuit against both of us for alienation of family affection and conspiracy to publicly ruin her reputation, also suing for continued emotional distress and claiming we had intentionally turned her family against her, demanding $750,000 in punitive damages plus all associated legal fees. Eleana called that night and urgently told me to come to her office, where she filed 3 separate aggressive counter lawsuits against Veronica for defamation, emotional distress, and sustained harassment, and simultaneously pressed criminal battery charges against Doreen for the physical assault at the party, sternly warning me that this legal war could drag on for months or even years, but that we had no choice but to fight back with every available resource. 2 weeks later, I woke up with intense, sharp internal electrical shocks shooting through my belly, forcing Desmond to drive me to the Emergency Fetal Assessment Center, where Dr. Vellum rushed in and administered powerful shots to immediately halt the premature labor, explaining with grave certainty that the duos would not survive if they arrived now at 24 weeks gestation, requiring me to remain in the hospital for 3 days on absolute bed rest while Veronica posted online about cosmic payback catching up to me. Jules showed up at my hospital room on the second day with a bouquet of plastic, synthetic flowers, apologizing for the entirety of the last 6 months, and told me that Veronica had been officially prescribed medication for her severe mental instability, but was actively refusing to take it, and that he was meticulously documenting everything for his divorce and maintaining a comprehensive record of his unstable behavior. 6 weeks after the Gelato Goth meltdown, Penelope organized a Banish the Drama support rally at our house, where cars clogged our residential street and people I hadn't seen since high school showed up with bizarre casseroles and expensive baby gear. We were all gathered in the backyard when Veronica stood on our front property, now 8 months pregnant and visibly trembling, yelling that I was purposefully turning the entire world against her, shoving Penelope violently when she attempted to gently guide her back to her scooter, leading to a large, sudden splash of liquid hitting the front lawn, causing Veronica to seize her abdominal with both hands. The ambulance arrived 15 minutes later, while she screamed hysterically that I had telepathically coerced her into early labor. But the following morning, everyone was reporting that Veronica had successfully delivered a small, healthy baby girl at the hospital, causing me a surprising, profound surge of relief that the baby was safe.
Doreen called my phone that afternoon, her voice pure, undiluted malice, announcing that Veronica had named the baby Peregrine Onyx Beatrice, adding my rewritten name purely to spite me, while Jules texted me that he was absolutely refusing to sign the birth certificate until Veronica agreed to intensive psychological counseling. 2 months after the original baby shower, a process server marched up to Penelope's house during my baby shower and handed me another set of legal papers, revealing Veronica was now seeking a restraining order of maximal severity against me, claiming I had caused her premature labor. The judge assigned to our case was a known member of Doreen's highly exclusive, bizarre ceramics guild, and Eleana was absolutely incandescent about the obvious conflict of interest. But despite the overwhelming mountain of evidence and Eleana's powerful legal arguments, the judge granted Veronica's restraining order against me, forbidding us from being within 1,000 feet of each other, which would render our numerous upcoming court dates logistically impossible, prompting Eleana to immediately file for a judicial recusal and initiate the lengthy appeal process. That night, I lay in bed, feeling the duals performing a slow, lazy synchronized role inside me, crying about the sheer, exhausting absurdity of the world we were preparing to introduce our babies into. 10 weeks passed with lawyers filing and refiling endless piles of papers while my abdomen grew larger, until Penelope showed up at my door one morning carrying a dusty, ancient cardboard box retrieved from her garage, containing all our childhood photographs from when Doreen had dramatically discarded them years ago, showing photos of Veronica and me at age 7, arms locked around each other at a local eccentric festival, and another of us wearing perfectly matching, terrifying clown costumes, with my hands trembling as I picked up one for my 8th birthday, where Veronica was helping me blow out candles, her face illuminated with a genuine, guileless happiness for my simple existence, making me realize this was no longer about a party or a mother's pathological favoritism, but about a fundamental, aggressive mental disintegration, destroying what had once been a normal sibling connection. Jules called that same afternoon with news that instantly sent ice water through my veins. He had filed for emergency custody of baby Peregrine after finding a new, disturbing journal where Veronica had written the phrase, "Deconstruct Beatrice," over and over again for 20 whole pages, and had been violently refusing to ingest her prescribed medication, and had missed 3 consecutive critical psychiatrist appointments, leading the family court judge to grant his petition immediately. When the custody officer arrived at Doreen's house to serve the official papers, Veronica suffered a complete, massive break from reality, grabbing baby Peregrine and speeding toward her scooter, while Doreen physically blocked the officer's path with her body, causing them to vanish into thin air before anyone could stop them, leading Jules to file a desperate missing person report for his daughter and prompting the regional alert system to go out that evening. Around midnight, the police located them at a highly suspect motel 2 towns away after a night manager recognized them from the alert, and both women were immediately arrested on the spot for aggravated custodial interference. The news footage showed Veronica screaming like a feral cat and physically fighting the officers while Doreen wailed about political persecution, and baby Peregrine was safely returned to Jules, who clutched her like she was the last remaining artifact of sanity. Eleana summoned us to her office 3 days later to discuss the terrifying volume of mounting charges, spreading files across her desk showing assault, threats, harassment, and now aggravated kidnapping charges levied against them both, and looked me directly in the eye, asking if I was emotionally prepared to testify and potentially sentence my own mother and sister to extended state confinement, prompting me to whisper yes as the crushing weight of that decision descended upon me. Marcus showed up at our apartment the following week, looking like he had spontaneously aged a decade. His divorce from Simone officially finalized, and admitted that he had always known it was morally reprehensible, but had consistently chosen the path of least resistance to avoid conflict, weeping as he told me he should have been a better, stronger protector. 3 months after the gelato goth meltdown, I was sitting in a deposition room answering tedious questions about every single incident when an intense, searing pain shot through my abdomen and Desmond leaped up as I doubled over in pain from a contraction, with the stenographer calling 911. At the hospital, Dr. Vellum worked with incredible speed to halt the labor with powerful intravenous medication, explaining that the extreme, persistent stress was triggering genuine, unstoppable labor at only 30 weeks, and that the duals desperately needed more time to grow, managing to suppress the contractions but issuing a grave warning that they could resume their attack at any moment. Meanwhile, Eleana's appeal was successful, and the judicial recusal was instantly granted, with a new, unbiased judge reviewing the entire case file and issuing formal bench warrants for both Veronica and Doreen for their flagrant violation of the original protection order. But Dr. Vellum insisted on complete, mandatory bed rest for the rest of my pregnancy. I spent my days confined to that sterile room, endlessly watching the twins' rapidly oscillating heartbeats on the monitors. Through a fake, highly secured social media account, I monitored Veronica's posts about being a martyr of persecution and how the entire judicial system was unfairly biased against her, seeming completely irrevocably detached from reality, existing in a dangerous fantasy where she was entirely innocent of any wrongdoing. A mind that was a dangerous, uncurated gallery. Then Rex delivered news that complicated everything. His corporate overlords were transferring him to Seattle. A full relocation package, massive promotion, a new life 3,000 miles from this buffalo-flavored carnival of affliction. 2 days later, my semi-sentient nightmare of a sister, Veronica, arrived at the hospital, claiming she wanted to apologize, but security tackled her near the elevators, though not before she managed to summon the lung power of a Bavarian yodeler to scream, "I hope your accidental genetic experiments die just like our relationship did," which led to 3 horrified nurses immediately adding their names to the witness list, and Eleana instantly adding witness intimidation of a high-risk patient to the growing list of felony charges. Jules, Veronica's ex-fiancé, showed up at my window 14 weeks after the gelato goth meltdown, holding tiny Peregrine Onyx wrapped in a pink shroud, and held the small, perfect creature up to the glass like an offering, mouthing that the divorce papers were signed, sealed, and delivered, and he was taking Peregrine to Rochester, far from the toxic, buffalo-flavored fumes of my family. And I pressed my hand against the window, watching the 2 of them leave, a small island of sanity sailing away. Eleana called the next morning with the news that the district attorney was folding everything into one monolithic, terrifying criminal case against both Veronica and Doreen. We were no longer dealing with civil skirmishes, but felony charges and actual prison time. The arraignment was Tuesday, and I watched the spectacle from my hospital bed, as Doreen stood beside Veronica in a truly unflattering orange jumpsuit, as the charges were read. And then, in a final, majestic flourish of melodrama, Doreen grabbed her chest and executed a flawless mid-courtroom collapse, prompting the bailiffs to rush in, while Veronica screamed at the news cameras that I was matricidally killing our mother before she was rushed out on a stretcher, suffering a massive myocardial infarction. Despite everything, watching them work on the woman who slapped me felt like a small, sharp pain in my chest. Marcus showed up an hour later, looking like he'd aged 20 years, confirming Doreen was stable but critical, and said she was asking for me, claiming a deathbed revelation about her life choices. And though Rex vetoed the idea instantly, something inside me fractured, and I agreed to see her under heavy security escort, where they wheeled me down 2 floors with 2 heavily armed guards flanking my hospital-issue wheelchair. Doreen looked tiny and gray,
aged 10 years by the weight of her own self-destruction, and reached for my hand and admitted through thick tears that she had been living vicariously through Veronica out of sheer jealousy of my independent success. 2 weeks later, back in my room at 32 weeks pregnant, the local news ran the headline, "Buffalo Family Feud Turns Criminal." And I rubbed my huge, tight belly, realizing my duos would inherit this digital toxic waste dump when they eventually Googled their lineage. Then, the news anchor delivered the ultimate mic drop. Leaked documents from Veronica's psychiatric evaluation revealed the diagnosis: Narcissistic Personality Disorder and postpartum psychosis, prompting her lawyer to instantly pivot the defense to temporary insanity. Grace materialized the next day with a small cake and balloons, a do-over baby shower, right in my hospital room. With just 10 close friends, eating cake and focusing on the soft yellow nursery Rex had meticulously set up in our new Seattle apartment. Rex never left my side, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair and whispering to my belly about the best Seattle pediatricians and the safest toddler music classes. 2 weeks later, all hell broke loose again. Veronica somehow escaped her psychiatric hold by tricking an orderly. Security footage captured her stealing a kitchen knife from the cafeteria before heading for the maternity ward, where she made it to the locked entrance, screaming my rewritten name and waving the knife like a deranged orchestra conductor. 3 guards tackled her, but not before she terrified every mother and visitor on the floor, and the entire unit went on 2-hour lockdown before she was reapprehended and hauled off, this time held without bail. The prosecutor instantly fast-tracked the trial due to the knife incident and my high-risk pregnancy. Eleana, the assistant prosecutor, who had morphed into my personal legal champion, came to my room with boxes of papers to prep me for testifying, showing me photos of the evidence, videos of the gelato goth meltdown, screenshots of the threats, the whole terrifying archive. Jules showed up again the next day with Peregrine Onyx, and after some small talk, he asked if Rex and I would be Peregrine's godparents if anything ever happened to him, and we instantly said yes. A small, hopeful pact amidst the wreckage. 3 days later, my OBGYN, Dr. Vellum, circled a date on my calendar: 34 weeks, declaring the twins big enough and me too stressed, so the C-section was scheduled for next Thursday, right in the middle of Veronica's trial. The morning of my testimony, Eleana set up the video equipment. The judge's face appeared, then the jury, and finally Veronica, in her orange jumpsuit, staring straight ahead and muttering to herself. And I described the baby shower chaos and detailed every single event from childhood that she had sabotaged with fake seizures and dramatic spontaneous collapse, leading to the jury members being visibly disgusted. Marcus visited that evening with a box of old VHS tapes he'd converted, showing a past life where Veronica and I were just 2 kids dressing up and playing in the backyard, the sister I'd lost to jealousy and a broken mind. Doreen took the stand 2 days later, and Eleana texted updates. Doreen admitted to hitting me and confessed she'd always favored Veronica because she was prettier and more outgoing, and broke down when confronted by the timeline of calculated sabotage. The next morning, the baby shower videos were played for the jury, and Veronica suddenly stood up, shrieking that I had doctored the footage and paid someone to edit the videos, leading to bailiffs having to physically remove her from the courtroom. Grace showed up that afternoon with 2 tiny blankets and a photo album filled with messages of love and hope from friends and nurses. A sanctuary of affection, protecting me from the legal ugliness. Jules testified the next day, bringing the cardboard box containing the devastating Operation Destroyed Beatrice notebook, and read pages describing detailed, malicious plans to ruin my prom, wedding, and every achievement in between. During his testimony, Veronica started screaming that Peregrine Onyx wasn't his baby and that she would kill everyone who betrayed her, including me and the twins, leading to the judge instantly ordering her removed. 2 weeks later, the judge declared Veronica unfit to stand trial. She was sent to the state mental facility for treatment that could take years, and Doreen's case proceeded alone.
Rex and I heard the news in our apartment. The next morning, my doctor scheduled the C-section for 35 weeks, since the stress was stunting the twins' growth. We promised each other on that last night to break the cycle for our children. At 7:23 a.m., our son was born. At 7:24 a.m., our daughter followed, both small but fighting. Rex cried, holding them. Marcus stood in the hallway, tears streaming, finally getting to be a grandfather. The twins went straight to the NICU. 3 days later, Marcus visited with news of Doreen's trial. She was convicted of assault and harassment, but got only 2 years probation and mandatory therapy. She was banned from contacting us. A week later, Eleana brought mail to the NICU. A letter from Veronica's facility. She was apologizing, but also announcing she was pregnant again with Jules's baby from before the separation. Jules showed up an hour later, completely broken by the news. The twins stayed in the NICU for 3 full weeks. Grace visited daily, showing me photos of the soft yellow nursery in Seattle. Eleana filed legal paperwork to transfer the restraining orders to Washington State, where stalking laws were stronger. 2 days before discharge, Veronica's psychiatric team called. Her delusions were fixated on my twins. She believed I had stolen her babies and had tried to escape twice. They strongly recommended we leave Buffalo immediately. Marcus arrived as Rex signed the discharge papers, revealing his ex-wife Simone had pled guilty to the HIPAA violations, lost her nursing license, and got 6 months in jail. Our last night in Buffalo, Grace pulled together a goodbye dinner. Marcus gave us a photo album of pre-chaos childhood pictures. The next morning at the Buffalo airport, I saw her. Veronica stood near Gate 12 with a medical aide, puffy from medication, holding a coffee cup. Her face crumpled when she saw us. She mouthed something that looks like, "I'm sorry," before the aide steered her away. That was the last time I saw my sister. On the plane, the twins nursed while Rex scrolled through Seattle listings. An older woman called us a lovely family. She had no idea we were refugees fleeing our hometown. We landed in Seattle. My phone exploded with messages from Eleana. Veronica had been involuntarily committed for 6 months after threatening to find us and take her babies. Jules was filing for permanent custody of both kids. Our new house was perfect, but I checked the locks 3 times a night. Rex found a trauma specialist for me. Marcus called. Doreen had started therapy and was truly remorseful. She sent a long, written apology. A month in, the twins smiled for the first time on a video call with Grace. We all cried. A moment of pure, unearned joy. Then Eleana called with news that made my stomach drop. Veronica had lost a pregnancy during a psychotic episode where she tried to cut the baby out herself, believing aliens had put it there. She was moved to a long-term psychiatric facility. Jules moved to Portland with Peregrine Onyx and his new girlfriend, close enough for the cousins to grow up together, but far from Buffalo's poison. 3 months into Seattle life, the final legal papers arrived. All criminal charges resolved, restraining orders made permanent, the Buffalo house sold. Veronica was institutionalized indefinitely. The war was over. Rex stayed home with the twins while I went back to work. I pumped milk in the bathroom, and my coworkers were oblivious to my viral past. I started accepting invitations for drinks, wearing a costume of normalcy. I finally sat on my therapist's couch and admitted the truth. I got pregnant on purpose to hurt my sister. Not for love, but for revenge. The therapist just nodded, and I told her I felt empty, guilty, and still angry. 6 months in, the twins were turning 1. Marcus called asking to visit. He showed up with a gift, a quilt made by Doreen, with an enclosed letter I refused to open. The quilt went into the closet, but not the trash. Grace got a job offer and moved 3 blocks away. Jules visited.
We had game nights and barbecues, and nobody mentioned the past. 8 months in, Rex suggested we renew our vows. Just us and the people who actually mattered. The ceremony was in our backyard with Grace, Jules, his girlfriend, and Peregrine Onyx. 9 months after leaving, a letter arrived from Veronica's doctor. She was making progress and had written apology letters. Would we consider supervised video contact? The letter went into the filing cabinet. Today wasn't the day. The twins took their first steps on the same rainy Tuesday. Rex laughed when one copied the other, declaring, "Competition could be good, like who could be the kindest?" We were writing new rules. I woke up crying from dreams of the sister who taught me to ride a bike, grieving a girl who might only exist in my memories. Rex held me without asking questions. 1 year in Seattle. I posted a single photo of the twins laughing at the park with the caption, "The best revenge is a life well lived." I turned off the comments. A woman sat next to me on the park bench and commented on how calm and happy we looked. I finally believed her. The twins would know their story someday, but today they only knew their world was safe and small and full of love.